Hello everyone, my name is Dr Hadia Aslam. I'm one of the many volunteer workers who work with refugees in the UK and abroad. I have been asked to record this video for you as part of your celebrations at Ealing Libraries, ongoing for the 15th year, I'm told, celebrating Refugee Week. I am a UK trained general practitioner. My ethnicity is Batan, sort of belonging to the north of Pakistan and Afghanistan area, roughly speaking. I trained as a doctor in the UK. My interest in the refugee community started during my years living in Pakistan. I don't know if many of you know, but Pakistan hosts, or at one point hosted, the largest refugee population in the world. And these were refugees and migrants from Afghanistan who were living and had been living for generations due to the ongoing conflicts in Afghanistan. These communities had been living in Pakistan for years. So my exposure came early. I was always interested in the way of life and sort of the constant movement that seeking refuge in another country brought to these people's lives, and as a result the troubles that were generated. After I finished my training as a GP in the UK, I went to Calais. At that time, some of you may remember in 2015, there was a picture that was doing the rounds on Western media outlets of a young child whose body was found on the Turkish shores. His name was Ayhan Kurdi. This particular picture generated an interest amongst people like yourself and me, and it encouraged us to arrive at places like Calais or Dunkirk in France or the Greek refugee camps. And since then, there has been a sustainable grassroots movement in these countries, supported by volunteers like yourselves and myself, as well as the grassroots NGO sector. So I'll talk today about some of the work I've done. I'll then talk about the health needs of the Syrian communities who are in refuge or who have arrived already in the UK. And I'll touch upon what the future, in my opinion, holds for refugee communities living in the UK. Excuse me. In France, I started in 2015. I was doing regular visits every other week and staying there for a few days at a time, offering first aid generally. But I noticed that there was a very, very big need, which was not being addressed by the bigger NGOs, MSF, Doctors of the World. They were very, very limited in what they were able to offer. And from where I was standing, I could see bureaucracy was stopping them from offering more. So when I arrived with my doctor's bag at these very small refugee camps, it meant I could offer some sort of a triage service and then invite the larger NGOs to come and treat the conditions that I was finding at the time. From France, I moved on to Greece, to Lesbos. Here, the medical charity that I eventually set up along with my friends and colleagues really took off in the shape and form of a 24-hour clinical facility in Lesbos, Moria. We set up in the winter that year, and we were open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were staffed by volunteers coming into our clinic from all over the world, medically trained, paramedics, doctors, nurses, and administration workers, coordinators. There was a very, very big movement online to help us staff this particular clinic. The funding was by the public, by individuals like you and me, my family, my friends, and those who were coming in to volunteer were bringing in donations. And we managed to keep a very effective service going for at least 6 months, which was then stopped by the EU-Turkey deal that happened in 2016. I then moved on to Thessaloniki with the group of volunteers who tried to sustain the service. We met with many obstacles, and eventually I took a break, and then I moved on to Lebanon, which is where I set up a mobile health facility, which is now a fully fledged project in the process of being registered as a charity. This mobile unit serves a minimum of 12 refugee camps and settlements in Lebanon, near the Syrian border. Prior to this, I had been working as a healthcare consultant for an NGO in Lebanon, looking after the Syrian communities, their general needs, their residents, etc. Coming back to the UK, the refugee communities that I've dealt with in the UK, their needs vary. Remember, they often come from a community where healthcare is not discussed in the manner of which we discuss it in the UK. And I found sort of the cultural shock to these communities was showing when they were coming into clinics to discuss their health needs. So patience is often required when you're trying to take this information from the refugee or migrant communities or asylum seekers. You have to try and understand the context that they're in, and the context has a very big influence from what is happening in the media at the time and how much they are dealing with, as a result of the backlash that the media is generating, the articles that are being churned out against asylum seekers, against refugees, against immigrants. There's often a very, very big psychological need, and there is a lot of PTSD. There is a lot of loss that immigrants, asylum seekers are facing on a daily basis while they're living in host countries. Constant reminders of home, being away from home, struggling financially. This generates all sorts of issues. Not being able to really discuss in their own language because a lot of things are lost in translation when they arrive into our clinics, giving us information with the help of translators. A lot of the context is lost in translations. So really trying to understand the background, the journeys they've faced, leaving home, and then in transit through Europe before they arrive into their host countries. It's really important to try and understand this so you can empathize with them in a way that they deserve or they need. So this is sort of a brief overview, in my opinion, of what we need to be focusing on when we're addressing the needs of refugee and migrant communities in the UK. What does the future hold for refugee and migrant communities as well as asylum seekers? I think the UK is going through a change, and unfortunately, whether it's a result of Brexit, whether it's a result of a long-standing movement against migrants, I feel we are becoming more and more intolerant as a country. And this shows on a daily basis, on billboards, on buses, on television, on news channels, on social media, out on our streets, in stores. The future does not look positive for refugee communities, and my advice, my humble advice, would be that we try and incorporate in our schools' curriculum the needs of communities who do not come from the UK, whether they are asylum seekers or second generation migrants, first generation migrants, or refugees. We need to start educating our children, the leaders of tomorrow, on how to be empathetic towards the needs of others who come to a country where everything is foreign for them, and they are there out of sheer need. They are there because the countries that they are living in have become very unsuitable for them, for their families, whether it's war, poverty, discrimination. So that's my message to you all. I hope you have a very productive week. Thank you very much for listening.